Hi, everyone. I'm Josh Weiss. As Debbie mentioned, I lead emerging technology and strategy for Jet, which if you don't know, and now actually we're part of also the same family as Moose Jaw. We're part of the Walmart family. We're a large online retailer. So what I'm going to talk to you today about, I think, follows a lot of the themes that you guys have already heard, but I want to try to take a little bit of a different look at it. So I don't need to tell this crowd, retail is undergoing a crisis, right? We're in a very challenging time right now, very scary for a lot of us. And so we know there's a lot going on. Now, there's a lot of factors that are causing this, right? And Dan, you talked about some of them. The US is overstored. We know that e-commerce is causing a lot of disruption. We know that people are preferring experiences over products. But what I want to do is I want to take a little bit of a different look, and I want to look at what's going on through the lens of the life of the customer. So bringing it down to how do people sort of go about and experience shopping and what that experience could be causing to what we're seeing happening in the market. So what I want to focus on today is something that's pretty simple, but I'll go into what it all means. And what I want to look at is how people transition their shopping from stores to online. So common thought would be people transition slowly and surely, right? They start shopping online a little bit, and then eventually they transition everything. What I think happens instead is that there's this essentially tipping point. There's a threshold that happens in customer behavior where people start transitioning some of their shopping slowly, and then they hit this threshold, and then all of a sudden they transition a lot more online, right? And they still are doing some shopping in stores, and stores play a critical role in all this mix. It's not like it's all moving online, but there is this kind of tipping point behavior that happens. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is essentially why this is happening, what this is causing, and what are some of the things that we can do about it. So let's start with e-commerce in general. What was the last thing you all bought online? Most likely, it was a book, as you were mentioning, Dan, or it was the new tech gadget or something like that. And that's for a very good reason, which is that for the most part, the role that e-commerce has played today is making one-off transactions. So transactional kind of e-commerce, right? And that's what we're used to thinking when we think about e-commerce. For everything else, we Americans go to the store, right? Now, when we look at the stats, it's very clear, right? Only 2% of household goods are bought online, and overall, only 8% of retail sales take place online. That's about to change. And we think we're in an inflection point that's going to sort of be the start of a lot of that. So what's happened here? What's happened is that high margin goods like books and electronics have created kind of a virtuous cycle where higher demand has led to bigger investment, has led to lowering of costs, which has paved the way for lower margin goods like household products to move online as well, right? And what that has done is it's started to change customer behavior. It's taken what we know of as the shopping trip, which people never do online, right? The shopping trip is to a store, and it's starting to move that online. And what that has done is it's basically untethered consumers from the store, right? So what this has basically done is essentially taken when you start as a consumer and you're shopping a little bit online, right? Early days, a lot of you are early adopters, so you guys probably, this was 5-10 years ago for you. You buy a little bit online, all of a sudden you're not going to the store as much. All of a sudden you're now buying maybe dog food, heavy dog food you don't want to carry home, or diapers for the baby, or paper towel, you're buying that online. And all of a sudden you're going to the store less and less, and soon it makes more sense to buy stuff online because you're not going to the store as much. You're not going to the store as much, so you buy more online. And you can see essentially it starts to trigger this kind of cycle where all of a sudden your exception is actually going out to the store, and more you're buying this stuff online. So what this is doing for retailers is it's creating consolidation, right? Whereas before you could have your local neighborhood stores, online there's no local neighborhood store, right? The biggest and best retailers online are reaping all the rewards of this kind of concentrated attention, and whether it's sort of being able to see more cohesive customer data, efficiencies that come with scale, being able to subsidize certain transactions in order to be able to capture you as a customer. We're seeing kind of these one-stop shops popping up online, Amazon obviously being one of them, Walmart being another one, and so on. So what's there to do about it, right? Dan mentioned a lot, Chanel is a great another example. I'm going to talk to you today about 5 things that I think we can all do to try to survive and really thrive in what's all going on with both online and offline retail as well. So the first is go where others aren't, right? So in the past, location was that. We could have regional differences in our footprint and we wouldn't be competing with others. Today, it has to be through your value proposition. It has to be through the role that you fit into the lives of your customers. And you have to think about how that's unique and how that's going to serve not everyone, but your particular customers in a way where they're going to choose you rather than one click away choosing someone else. And so the way to do that is to do things like experience, to do things like service, to do things like brand, to do things like category specialty and expertise and assortment and so on. You could do things like subscription, things like delivery. A lot of different ways to try to essentially specialize and do something better than anyone else for your particular customer. The second is something that's been talked about a lot, which is experience. Now, in the past, there's always been a lot of talk about experience because it's a fairly obvious point, right? What I think is different now is that in the past, you didn't have to compete with experience, right? Your experience could frankly be pretty poor and you'd still be okay. That's no longer the case, and there's actually a lot of opportunity here. If you think offline, you can think about a retailer, in a sense, like Starbucks, right? And what they're doing with in-store experience. They're coming up with new concepts all the time and really creating incredible experiences for customers that keep them coming back. Online, there's also a lot of opportunity. So we talk about all these great online retailers, but for the most part, retail hasn't changed much online in the last 20 years since it started, right? You go to a site and the page to buy diapers looks very much like the page to buy high-end jewelry, right? So there's a lot that we can do to try to break out of that. TrueFit's a great example. There's a lot of different things that we can do to really push the online experience a lot further. So number 3 is trying to capture the entire lifetime of a customer rather than one-off transactions. So going back to not just trying to be a transactional site, oftentimes online, because of where it's come from, where essentially it was just a tack on to retail stores, was often thought of as a place to be able to capture one-off purchases. And all the calculations that went into that were about capturing one-off purchases. So you would say essentially, how much am I making on an order? All right, this is how much I want to invest on capturing that order. Now, because of everything that we're talking about, trying to get consumers to keep coming back, consumer behavior shifting to starting to do repeat purchases online, it is now important to think about the entire lifetime of the customer and doing the investment commensurate to try to capture that, right? So you might lose money on your first transaction, but it's worth it if you can get that customer to keep coming back because that's going to be the new normal. All right. Number 4, delivery. So I keep talking about online, and when I say online, what I'm actually talking about is sort of digitally originated purchases, right? So this doesn't necessarily have to have fulfillment that matches what we've all been used to, which is having someone deliver it to your door, right? So far, when we think about delivery, what we think about is we think about as fast as possible, whether it's with Amazon or whether it's with Google or what have you, is having someone drop that off at your door. Now, fast is great, and for the types of purchases like we talked about that online has traditionally been for, books and electronics and so on, fast is really great. But as all these other categories start to move online, as we've talked about, fast isn't always necessarily what you need, and fast is really expensive. So as a retailer, if you're able to offer consumers a variety of delivery options, and I'm not just talking about to their home, and you're able to actually offer granular pricing, where you're able to say, look, you pay for what you get. It's not all just baked into the price. We're going to give you a lower price, but we're going to let you choose what kind of fulfillment option is right, not just for you, but also for this particular purchase. So for example, if you're buying groceries, you don't necessarily need them right away. You might not need them till next week. And if you're able to save some money, that's something that's going to be really interesting to you. So I think what we're going to hear a lot more and more about is blended fulfillment, right? Being able to use traditional online methods with in-store methods to be able to do pickup, to be able to have a store hand it off to an Uber driver that can take it to your house, to have your neighbor pick it up for you, a variety of different options, and I think we're going to start to see a lot more breadth in that area. Then the last one is you have to act early, right? So as we talked about at the outset, this is a really challenging time. There's a lot of chaos, but there's a lot of upending that's going on. And in that, this is kind of the opportunity to start going in and seizing customers and getting them to start shopping with you and keep shopping with you. But if you don't do it now, and if now's not the time, I don't know when, you're going to have to pay a lot more to acquire those customers and to invest in your experience that will lead to repeat customers later on. So even though it's always scary to invest a lot of money, if there's a time to do it, now is the time to do it. Okay? So those are the 5 things that I think we're looking at of how you can kind of try to be successful in all the chaos that's going on. So let me close by saying this. The bottom is starting to fall out, right? It's scary times out there. And I started off by saying, right, this is probably one of the most challenging times that we've seen in retail in recent history. But it's actually a really exciting time, right? And what I want to impart on you guys is that there's a lot of fun that we can have with this. Because the bottom is falling out, right? Because it's such chaotic times, this is no time for complacency. This is where you can use the pain that's being caused by what we're seeing out in the marketplace to essentially overcompensate for the pain of change, right? Again, retail has been very stagnant. We haven't innovated. We haven't pushed the boundaries like some other industries have. Excuse me. So this is an opportunity to be able to do so. And that's a lot more fun than just sitting tight, right? So what I kind of say to all of you guys is take advantage of this time to be able to make the case for all the cool and interesting stuff that you guys have heard that I've talked about, that all the other speakers have talked about, to be able to sort of now take action so that you can be ahead of all of this stuff and use it to sort of look at the next 5 years, because the next 5 years are going to look very different than the last 5 years, to be able to become a leader in that period of time. All right, that's all for me. So I went through it all really quickly, and I'd love to take any questions or anything like that. All right, I nailed it. No questions. All right, guys, so I'm Josh from jet.com. I'll be around. If you guys have any questions or want to chat about anything, I'd love to. Thanks a lot.